Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's start a whole new series here, once again based on your new suggestions. Lots of new suggestions this go around. In fact, when I was reviewing the information, I already saw that there's a bunch of them already in there. So thank you so much everyone for those suggestions. I'll continue to review them here, probably into next week as well. And for this one, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a famous Japanese urban legend, something that actually parallels very much so one that we have here. I was a little hesitant on doing it first because I thought to myself, what are the chances that it truly is something of an urban legend, or if it's more on the lines of a creepy pasta? But I couldn't really find much info as far as it being the latter part, so I thought to myself, why not? Why not just share it here and then leave everyone else a chance to comment below and see what your thoughts are. But it has to do with this. It's a urban legend of a very tall, ghostly, ghastly type woman known as, and this is a doozy of a name, known as Hachishakusama. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hachishakusama. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with this urban legend. And those of you, in fact, that are in Japan, there'll be a good chance for you to comment on below and let us know what your thoughts are too. So here's how it goes. Hachishakusama literally translates to 8-foot tall woman, and that's essentially why it's called that, because when you encounter this thing, whatever it is, I still don't know if it's a ghost, if it's a spirit, if it's an entity, or if it's some kind of just outright demon or monster or something else like that. It is an 8-foot tall woman, very tall in fact, but it might even be taller than 8 feet altogether, who stalks and basically abducts children from surrounding adults. So that's basically her mantra. That's someone that, whoever this entity is, just loves to enjoy just going around there in Japan and then finding these children and sometimes stalking them for days and other times actually months on end. And then when that happens, that's when those children become her next victim. The way she's appeared too, it seems to be a huge variance. On the one end, she seems to be very, very beautiful. Like she's someone that very attractive. People just can't stop looking at her. I imagine that's a great way for whoever she is to totally stalk her victims and do so in a very beneficial manner to her, because who would run away from someone that is very, very attractive, especially a very attractive woman? On the other end, though, it's someone that is just the most ghastly vision you have ever seen. Just something involving the world of, let's say, an older hag type entity, the ones that we talk about sometimes here in the US, that just are just visions that you never want to actually see at all in life, let alone, let's say, right in front of you. Here you have this thing, in other words, also going to that part. The weird thing, though, is it's hard to tell if this is something that switches back and forth between those two extremes, from being beautiful and attractive to being just ugly and ghastly. Who knows? But it seems to be at least that all around it is a bad experience to come across her because of this. Again, anything involving her and her abductions, those things apparently do not end well at all. Like essentially, once those children are captured, then that's pretty much it. They never seem to be found afterward. But good news is at least you'll have an opportunity to know your presence or her presence up front because of this. She is said to make a very scary sound, something that people can hear when she is in proximity. And the way this sound is, apparently it sounds like a human male voice, but deeply, I don't know, guttural. Like the way I was reading the information is it's a masculine type voice, but it's completely turned up in terms of its scare factor. Like imagine, if you will, like maybe like a demon-like masculine voice. And for whatever reason, the sound that it makes is the letter Po. I'm sorry, the letters P-O. In other words, they spell out Po. And then there's a pause, and then it's Po again, and then there's a pause, and then there's another Po. And that's essentially what it sounds like. In fact, I'll include the link for it below. I don't know if this is an actual captured audio or a representation of this creature, whatever this is, this Hachishakusama, but you can click on the link within the actual article, and then you can hear about a 4-second sound of what it sounds like. And I listened to it myself, and I thought to myself, I don't know, it didn't really make any hair stand up on my end. But imagine something like this stalking you, knowing that you're being stalked, and then hearing this around you. I think that would definitely make things a whole different thing. And then as far as where this Hachishakusama comes from, apparently it's been around for a long time, and that's why it's become like an almost famous urban legend there in Japan. The way the story goes is that sometime in the far past, who knows how far back, it could be centuries, who knows? But sometime then, this Hachishakusama was also terrorizing the locations there in Japan, abducting children, stalking them, in other words, until finally she ran into these monks. I think it was either four monks or maybe even more, who knows? But these monks were able to trap her. They used these four small Jaizu statues, if I'm saying that correctly, Jaizo statues, and then that way they placed them in four specific directions surrounding a building. This building was either completely just decaying or if it was already ruined slash abandoned, and either way they were able to trap her there somewhere in the middle of nowhere and then have these statues keep her there, almost like a genius Loki. You know how that's one of my most favorite cryptids of all time, how the genius Loki is forever imprisoned within a small section of land. That's what I was reading this information for the Hachishakusama. So that's her being trapped by these statues, and then everyone thought that it was it, that they were going to live happily ever after, and that's so. But unfortunately there is no happy ending, because as it turns out, one of those statues broke, and that's all it took. When one statue broke, it was almost like a portion of the gate being broken. The gate no longer serves any purpose because there's an opening, and that's essentially what happened. Hachishakusama escaped, and when she did so, she was then moving about ever since then in Japan, again looking like an 8-foot tall woman, and most distinctly in modern times, wearing a white summerish type dress, and then also having a wide brimmed hat. I imagine it's more like a summer hat as well, the kind you see that ladies like to wear sometimes on themselves. But either way though, if you see that, like if you see a very tall woman somewhere in the far distance and she has on a dress and then she has on a hat, both of them being white as well, that's a good chance that you're actually looking at a Hachishakusama from the far distance. And as I mentioned earlier, all around the experiences meeting her are very bad, because if she doesn't take you then, like in other words, if she doesn't stalk you and then abduct you right then, apparently though, it's still more along the lines of a curse. Anyone that sees her faces a doom. Like in other words, they're gonna die out sometime soon. She's almost like the Mothman. You know how the Mothman prophecies state every time it appears that there's gonna be something as far as a dangerous situation, some kind of calamity that ensues whatever location it visits. Such is the case here with this Hachishakusama. Apparently her entrance will make sure that something is almost like a bad omen, something bad will happen soon to whoever has seen her, and she purposely makes herself visible to that doomed person. So it's not like she's suddenly going to appear in front of someone by accident and then that person is going to have something bad happen to them. The way I read the information, it was more of, no, it's going to be something pretty bad to a very specific person. But there is a way around it. Apparently, if you see this ghost entity, again, whatever it is, someone fill me into what your thoughts are. If it's a demon, if it's a spirit or anything else like that. But if you see it, the only way around, the only way you can escape that forever doom is you have to leave Japan. Once you leave Japan, then for whatever reason, this Hachishakusama doesn't travel anywhere outside of that location, then you'll be fine. Then everything is perfectly good. You won't have any more possibilities of being cursed or whatever in terms of that doom that I was mentioning earlier. You will be safe, but that's going to take a large sacrifice, no, because essentially you have to drop everything, whatever career you had there, family ties, anything like that. No, that's all going to be gone because of this curse that whatever this Hachishakusama actually placed on you. What makes it more difficult too is that the way she lures, especially children out there, is she can also mimic other people. So anyone that you have in your aforementioned family, the ways that she can make sure that she traps you almost into her seeing you and vice versa is she'll mimic their voices, and then that way if you see her from afar and that doesn't do the trick, then she'll at least do that imitation of people very important in your life, and then that way all of a sudden you are the next victim of her. I was reading also a story, a well-known story, or probably considered the most famous story, about an encounter with her, about the tale of a boy, some Japanese boy, who apparently back in 2008, so it wasn't too far back, ran into her, and this was an encounter while he was there visiting his grandparents, and then that way he saw her through some hedges, saw how impossibly tall she was based on the eye level that she was looking at him, in other words, and then telling that story to his grandparents, and then his grandparents realizing, much to their horror, what had just happened in terms of who he visited and so on. But the more I was reading the information, I thought to myself, this one, I don't know, this didn't have too much credence to it. Like, it almost read like one of those tales that's passed around on the internet when it comes to certain encounters, almost like a movie of sorts, almost like a movie where you see and expect something bad to happen around the corner, and that's the way I was reading this info. But if you want to see more information about that tale, you can below. Again, that same link, the one that I included earlier, the one that I was talking about, that showcases that, I don't know, reproduction of the voice of her. You can read more of that information on that tale, and then that way you can see what happened to this boy. But apparently there's not much else. Like, there wasn't really anything else I could find online in terms of other personal encounters. So this is a good opportunity. Anyone that's out there here now listening to my voice, if you're there in Japan, or if you know others, friends, family members, other co-workers, anyone else that might have encountered this urban legend, this Hachishakusama, then please post those comments below. It'd be really, really great to hear what those encounters are. Plus, if I missed anything important about her, maybe something else that I'm thinking involving this type of urban legend that should be shared as well, then please do so as well. And I mentioned at the very beginning how it almost mimics something here in the U.S., and that was the Slender Man. You know how the Slender Man, something else that many people have suggested for me here to talk about, but the only reason I do so is because it's involved more on the creepypasta side. But when I was reading this info, it seemed to me like it was very close to one another. If Slender Man is the male version, then here you have the female version of something stalking and then abducting children, there in this case in Japan. So very interesting parallels between the two. But all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.